You're listening to the Identity Sports Podcast, where we dive into the world of faith, sports, and inspiration with athletes from across the country. I'm your host, Zach Vogel.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Identity Sports Podcast. We've got a very incredible episode with you today. We're joined here today with Carson Ragsdale of the San Francisco Giants. So Carson, it's a pleasure to have you today.
Zach, it's a pleasure to be on here. I'm excited.
Yeah, so we're going to dive into a little bit of just your story. I mean, there's multiple significant injuries that you've had to overcome to really just getting added to the 40-man roster not too long ago. So we'll kind of talk through what it was like to go through those things, what God was teaching you in and through that. I'm sure there was some anger. I'm sure there was maybe even some thankfulness now that came out of it, and really kind of your goals for this season. So let's go ahead and jump on in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So Carson, you just headed here from practice. I know spring training is just around the corner, but teams now, it's almost like you never actually get time off. It's kind of the early spring training for you. How are things going right now?
Things are going great. Yeah, we're very fortunate with the Giants. They take good care of their guys, and they have a fantastic facility. Feed us 2 great meals a day, and everybody's out there. So it's cool to see everybody want to be there and want to come out early and get their reps in and work together. So yeah, I'm definitely grateful.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a hunger with the younger guys on the roster right now. Yeah. Are you sick of PFPs yet?
Not yet.
No. Okay. So we're
Only
still early.
Yeah, like 2 weeks in. So
okay. So 2 weeks, it's still fun. Maybe in a couple months, you're like, man, I hate doing these things. But no, that's awesome. And so tell us a little bit of just your story to where you're at now.
Yeah. So I grew up playing baseball. That was kind of my whole world. I grew up Catholic. Was in a family that knew about the importance of Jesus, knew about the importance of faith, but it never really made its way into my life. I always kind of thought that I had to perform for God. So I thought that when I got to heaven, God would ask me why should I let you in? And I would answer with a bunch of I did this for you, I did that, and I wanted to do good by God, but that kind of infiltrated into the rest of my life. I played baseball and was worried about what other people thought of me, was worried about the worldly success, and I wanted to earn other people's opinions, good opinions. I wanted them to think highly of me, think that I was a good player. And when my play on the field didn't add up to that, I kind of rode the highs and lows of that. So it kind of brought about a lot of pain, and it was tough. There was definitely tough times when things weren't going well on the field. So I just, in all reality, I just trusted in myself. That was where I was.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, the whole identity thing is, so when you find your identity in a sport, or even the performance or the results, and so I mean, you have a game where maybe you strike out 10 guys, man, I'm on the fast track to the Hall of Fame, and then you have a game where maybe you give up 5 earned runs and don't make it past the 3rd inning, and you think you're the worst player ever. Yeah. So that's definitely tough as a kid. And so you said you were kind of raised Catholic. When did things start to kind of, when did you start to learn more, kind of grow into your faith?
Yeah. So, I mean, I trusted in myself for most of my life, up until high school, college time frame. I wanted to, I just wanted to play for me. I wanted to live and be a good person and kind of do it that way. But things started to change for me when I faced adversity for the first time, and my identity in myself and a baseball player, or as a baseball player, when that was taken from me, that's when I had to question, where is my foundation really? Is it in something that's sturdy that will withstand all the highs and lows of life, or is it in something fleeting like the game or other people's opinions? So in college, I had my first surgery, had Tommy John, in 2018. That was going into my junior year of college, and was supposed to be a big year for me. I had only thrown like 20 innings prior to that. And I had surgery in the fall of that year, and that was something that like I kind of was able to like bootstrap it through. And Tommy John was like kind of like a scripted out rehab, and it seemed like pretty like XYZ, you do this and you'll get better, and most guys get it and
come back even harder.
throwing. Yeah, that was my goal, was like throw 100 and come back, and still haven't hit that goal yet, but
yeah,
still working there. But
we're working on it. We're still only 2 weeks into spring, right?
Yeah.
You could get there.
Yeah, but like I thought it would all be like scripted out, so I just like worked my way through it. Didn't really need to like turn to anything outside of myself to find help. And then a couple years later, I get drafted and go into my first professional season and actually have like put together a really good year.
Yeah.
And then I come home and find out that I needed another surgery. So it'd be like my second. And
so that happened after the season.
Years.
After the season, you realized you needed it. So you were pitching through pain? I
was pitching through swollen arm.
Okay.
So I had blood clots and not much pain, but just like it felt fatigued. I had never thrown that many innings in my life, and my arm just felt dead, and I didn't realize that it was actually like getting swollen and swelling up every time I'd throw. So I got home and looked down at my arm after like a day of recovery throwing, like literally the week after the season. My arm was like looked like Popeye's arm. So I was like, all right, something's wrong here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially finding like relying on yourself for your whole career. I mean, there's, as you know, athletes, when things tend to hurt and stuff, you're taught to just push through it.
Yeah.
And so you did that for the whole year of my fatigue. Everyone goes through it. It's okay. Eventually my arm will come back around. And then you all of a sudden after recovery day, you're looking like Popeye. So did you go straight to the hospital or you call 911? What?
We went to urgent care, and then they sent me to the ER after that. And they're like, yeah, you need, something needs to be fixed here.
Yeah. And so that was Thoracic Outlet Syndrome.
That was Thoracic Outlet Syndrome.
So tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah. So basically, it's an injury that happens like repetitive overhead motion. It just kind of constricts like the area between your collarbone and first rib. And the way to fix it is just I got my first rib cut out. So they just go in and make extra space so you don't have that constriction anymore. And that's pretty much it. So
do you have extra flexibility now with that half a rib gone, or what?
You would think so, but I don't know if I've got there.
Yeah?
Yeah. But they told me it was going to be a 3-month rehab, and I thought I was going to be able to get back up and playing the next spring training, and turned out I missed the next two years. And I was just dealing with like the residual effects of that surgery, and that was what kind of like brought me to my knees.
Yeah. And if you know anyone else that has gone through thoracic outlet syndrome, like you said earlier, Tommy John is almost so scripted where, you know, in the baseball world, you can name 5 or 6 people, you know, good buddies that have had it and come back and they're healthy again. Yeah. Thoracic outlet syndrome there's a lot of unknown in that. It's not as scripted, and the timetable can vary greatly, which for you, so it took you 2 years, and you said that was kind of the thing that maybe got you to not rely so much on yourself. Tell us a little bit just into that thought process during that recovery for you.
Yeah, I mean, so initially I was super frustrated. It happened quick, where I was like, the day I went to the ER to find out that I had it to the time I had surgery was like less than 2 weeks, and I was just like, all right, let's get it done so I can play. But then like once things started to get a little hairy and didn't seem to be going like the right way, I ended up after I had surgery, I ended up staying in the hospital for 10 days, just because of all the complications that happened from it. And I think like in that time in the hospital, I realized like my identity is not working, you know, so I need to I had like I said, growing up, I knew about God, and I knew that I should live a certain way, but I knew that I wasn't living that way. And I feel like in the hospital during that week or so that I was there, that's when I kind of like made a deal with God and like devoted. I kind of said to him, like, Lord, just get me out of this hospital, and
Yeah.
I know what I need to do. I know that like you need to be the center of my life and not the game anymore. And like it took me a couple months after the surgery to like start to live that out, but yeah, it was tough at the beginning, and there was a lot of frustration. And then once I got out of the hospital and started to like actually open my Bible and read through different passages and understand like what I had believed about God in my earlier years versus what he reveals to us in the Word, it was two completely different things. So once I started to like kind of build my life upon his rock, like I started to feel his peace like come through me, and to know that like I'm not bound by my circumstance. Like I can have peace regardless of the situation. So that was over a couple months to a year probably of like getting that figured out. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 10 days in the hospital after that, that's the first time that, you know, you felt like you couldn't control the outcome.
Yeah.
You couldn't will yourself to overcome
Yeah.
the complications of what
Exactly.
was going on. And so now I'm sure looking back at it, it's easier to talk about it if you can see where God had his hand on that. But in the middle of it, I mean, you're so frustrated and you want to will yourself to do it and you just can't. And so you went back to God. You kind of had, you know, the different deals and praying and kind of going back to what you had learned all those years. But now you got to try and put that into practice.
Yeah.
And so you had also mentioned that it took a couple years to fully be healthy. So was it just like you kind of came back to God, I need you, and everything was fine and dandy, or was it just a continual battle over those 2 years?
It was definitely a battle. Like it definitely wasn't just like an overnight thing, but it was just like a continual surrender of just knowing, like learning really about who God was and who I am, and understanding that I am sinful, I'm broken, and I need help. I need a savior. So yeah, just being able to surrender my circumstance to him, and just really trust him with my future. And he really took me to a place where, like I said, I couldn't really work my way out of it. So I just had to take it one day at a time, and just do what I could that day to make myself, or like become a little bit better that day, and then just trust him with the rest of it.
Yeah. Were there specific verses or maybe like a Bible study that you like stood out to you during that time to help you with that?
I started reading through like a Bible plan on my own, and I didn't really understand much, to be honest, for the first like couple weeks going through it. And then I started reading, I got to Romans and was reading through Romans, and that's when things just like really like started to come alive to me for the first time. And one verse that I can remember early on was Ephesians 2:8 and 9. Just learning that our salvation isn't from our works, and it's only by grace alone through faith in him that we can be saved.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because you touched on it done early on is you thought you could almost work your way into heaven.
Yeah.
And then to have that situation happen, that realization, and then to read those scriptures that, you know, there's nothing that we can do on the field, off the field that can make God love us more or to earn our salvation.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's super cool to hear. And so now, what did your life look like on the field after that? And even now, I mean, so you're kind of understanding that truth. Tell us a little bit about the difference from Carson pre-surgery, Carson after surgery.
Yeah, Carson pre-surgery was just super anxious, like on the field, constantly worried about like if I was going to mess up, if I was going to walk somebody, or like what people are going to think of me if I didn't perform the way that they know that I could, or the way that I know that I could.
I heard that's a great thought too for a pitcher to just think, don't walk this guy.
Yeah,
It's a great mental thought.
Really good thought. Yeah. But now I feel like with like playing with Jesus and knowing like what my identity is, and knowing that I am a son of God and not a baseball player primarily, I'm just like freed up. Like I can just go out there and play and trust him with the outcome. And I feel like last season was like the first year where I was really just trying to live and play like that, and just taking it one day at a time. And I don't do it perfectly, but I can see like where my new identity can lead me, and sometimes the old identity can kind of creep in, and how I can like combat those lies with truth and kind of snap out of the spiral a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely helpful to remember like that this game like isn't everything.
Yeah, it's that perspective is key to athletes,
Mm-hmm.
because especially like you look at your day right now and you're, at the field, and then when you get home, you're probably looking at different, with all the analytics now too, of like how can I always get an edge or, improve. And so the weights and everything, the diets that come into play with these things, these specific training regimens, that you lose sight of there's other things happening in this world and outside of this locker room or this
Mm-hmm.
game right here. And that's where it's so cool to go in, with your teammate now, Robbie Ray. One of the cool things that I've heard him say in the past is he makes himself available in the
Yeah.
locker room. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going up and preaching to everyone, but guys know where he stands and they know that he's available. So if they ever have something outside of the game, they can come talk to him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just an ear to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with that being said, I mean, what are like some of the cool things that you've just personally seen in your career where God has kind of moved on the field or even in the locker room that you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just those conversations with guys. Like that's ultimately the purpose of playing, is not to pursue like the worldly success or to get to the big leagues, but like I feel like that's something I learned in rehab. Like everywhere that I've been, like God has placed me there for a reason, and it's to share Him with like the people that I'm around. So like it's about just loving on guys and being there, and I think that's awesome. What Robbie says, like just being available and making yourself available, because it's like in the locker room, everybody's just got blinders on, worried about themselves, and when you have somebody that's worried about others first and um, is making themselves available to love on them and to just talk honestly, like it really stands out. So yeah, I mean, we've had multiple instances of that, and I think last year I've been fortunate enough to have at least like a couple teammates that are believers that also want to like um, like pursue Jesus in the clubhouse and on the field, and like just starting up Bible studies and seeing like whoever shows up. Sometimes it's just a couple guys, sometimes it's 10. But just being able to go out and open up our Bibles outside of the locker room and just hop on, like we had like a little porch or like a patio bench that we just sit out there and talk about Jesus for a little bit, or even chapel. But just seeing who showed up and then like kind of being intentional about pouring into those guys.
Yeah, that's a special bond, and
Mm-hmm.
especially as the young guy to be able to walk into those locker rooms and see that. I mean, as you grow in your career, you can be that guy back to those of like the Robbie Rays and stuff, and the other guys on that team that they know how hard it is to be the new guy in the
Mm-hmm.
locker room, and
Yeah.
trying to just figure out where maybe the lunchroom is, or every ballpark you go to it's different, and
Mm-hmm.
there's that sense of uneasy, and you want to try and figure out how you can get in that comfortable state, and so those guys can help you get into that and help you relax with those.
Yeah.
So as you're kind of going into this next year, what are some of the goals that you've set for yourself? What are you most looking forward to?
Yeah, some goals, honestly, just like being present every day, not getting ahead of myself, not like trying to play GM and figure out like what's my path to
Mm.
achieving my dreams, because that's something that I've fallen victim to in the past, and I think that's something that happens in clubhouses and locker rooms. So not getting bitter or anything, but just like being present, and like just the verse I had in my glove last year was Matthew 6:33, just seeking first the kingdom and His righteousness, and trusting that everything else will be added to me after that. So I just want to live that out this year.
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
great. Yeah, because again, going from just seeing the progress in your life of being so results based and results
Yeah.
focused, and then what's your goal for this year? I mean, none of it was results based. It was
Mm-hmm.
all what can you control, and you
Yeah.
can control to be present in every moment. And you can put in all the preparation, but at the end of the day, you can't totally control where the ball goes or what happens to the ball after you let go of it.
Yeah.
And so that's just a really cool mindset. And you know, with that being said, you know, what is what is your mindset when you take the mound? What's your pre-pitch thought? Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, not really a whole lot. I feel like
That's good.
yeah, versus like where I was before, I was thinking of everything that you're not supposed to think of, just constantly. The wheels were spinning up there. So yeah, just trusting the Lord, honestly. I had a teammate this past year. It was a cool thing he does was every time he takes the mound, he finds an open seat and just imagines Jesus sitting in that seat, and that's like his reset. He just looks up into the stadium and finds that seat that he's focused on and just plan for that audience of one. So I kind of implemented that towards the end of last year, and it's honestly just so like it just brings so much relief and peace out there. You just go out and have fun. Like it's a game. You're supposed to have fun. We just put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect or to be perfect, honestly. So to know that it's okay, like if you mess up, just to get back out there and continue working hard.
Yeah, you're competing in that freedom, and you're playing like a kid again, where you're not scared of the results or what could happen. You're just being out there to compete. And I love that. I mean, man, I wish I could go back in time and have that thought, because I was very much I knew exactly where everyone in my family and my friends were sitting.
Yeah.
And I would look at them before every pitch.
Yeah.
And they were great. You know, they put no pressure on me. But myself, I built that pressure up. And so to find an empty seat, if you can find one, I mean, who knows what happens if it's a sellout?
I don't know. I think someone will give up their seat for Jesus, or
someone down a bathroom break. He's switching seats during the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so yeah, I love that idea and that concept of just playing in that freedom and recognizing that, you know, you can't do anything on the mound to please him more than he's already pleased in you, even if you fall. You're preparing for the season. You mentioned the different goals that you have of just being present. What other goals are there in terms of, like, you know, with teammates? Are there different, you know, studies you guys are diving into? What does your relationship with Christ or quiet time look like now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it just goes back to like being intentional and really just like learning and kind of seeing how like I can lead people to know who Jesus is, or how I can be an example of Jesus in the locker room. And that's like a goal I have with my teammates, is to just be able to share openly with them. And to have them know where I stand. I think that's important as a believer on a team, is to like, you don't want to like push down anybody's throat, but just to like have them know where you stand, and to know that you trust in Jesus over anything else. I think that's extremely powerful. So I feel like that would be one of my goals this year, is to just be able to open up the word with some guys and help them like combat the lies that they believe, because everybody believes lies in the game and in life in general, and to just be able to pour truth into them.
Yeah. For those that aren't familiar with just the chapel system in baseball, I mean, how prevalent is that? I mean, you've had, you know, you spent some time with the Phillies, you know, you kind of bounce around between teams and minor league cities. Does each city have a completely different system? What does that look like for you guys to be able to pour into that?
Yeah, it's really cool how the baseball chapel does it. They have like a study that they're doing with every single team. Like it's like kind of like the organization puts it out and everybody follows it. So
is it the same study for teams? Like, is all MLB doing the same study?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe so. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works, is that because they have their app and everything, and it's all on there. But yeah, you go, if you're on the road, you're walking through the same thing that we walk through with our home chaplain. So I think that's the coolest thing, is I've definitely been blessed by our chaplains, especially this past year. We had a couple of really good ones in AA and AAA, and just being able to build those relationships with them, and to have them be able to pour back into you and to remind you of who you are and your identity, and knowing that they can kind of course correct with you, and you can have that like reset Sunday mornings, because we're not really able to get to church regularly because of games and travel and all that. But just be able to gather and to talk about Jesus and have people show up. I think it's really a blessing.
Yeah, and you get to make the baseball field your church.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that you honor him, you get to invite God in those moments and bring the church to your teammates. But it's so cool to hear that the chapel process. I mean, baseball chapel is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And all the different sports and athletes that we have on this show, there's nothing quite like baseball chapel. You know, NHL's starting to build and grow theirs, but it's still kind of younger, and NFL's got some chaplains here and there, but nothing as like robust as the baseball world in that. So it's just
Yeah.
really a model for these other leagues to aspire to. And, you know, one of the things that we're seeing more often than not is like every sporting event now in the press game, you know, interview or the post game, you hear someone give glory to God, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot deeper than just the, hey, you know, thank you, God, for helping me win. There's some, you can tell the truth and the faith really behind that. And
Mm-hmm.
what do you feel like is kind of turning the page basically for athletes? Why do you think we're hearing more of that or seeing that predominant in these guys?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what's going on, but it's awesome. It's really cool. Like, I mean, just like the national championship this year, it was just Ohio State, Notre Dame, just both teams
Mm-hmm.
really, every interview, I feel like it seemed like they were just giving glory to God. But yeah, I don't know what's going on. Maybe just people are realizing like the more maybe social media with people putting their stories out there, like, and seeing like the players that are in the highest positions, like in the big leagues or in the NFL or whatever, like them coming out and saying that, hey, this isn't all it's chalked up to be. Like, there's got to be something else. I feel like maybe that access is allowing people to like have an insight that they haven't really had before, and before they get there, it's like, whoa, wait a second, what am I working for? If they're not really being fulfilled by what I think I'll be fulfilled by, like, there's got to be something else, and maybe that's what the search is. But yeah, I don't know, it's really cool regardless.
The goalposts move a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
your dream, okay, I want to be a Major League Baseball player. You get the call, it's super cool for a day.
Yeah.
You walk into an MLB stadium for your first time, it's cool, and then, okay, what next? You know, what do I strive for now? And it's okay, I want to make All-Star team. I want to win the World Series. But you hear guys that have been there, and you're right, where they're like, hey, I've won the World Series 4 times, and then I'm all left with, what now?
Yeah.
What next? It's a fleeting feeling, and the only thing that can truly fulfill you is, you know, that relationship with Jesus Christ. And so, yeah, it's really cool to see those open just from like your career from like Little League all the way up. Do you feel like when you're on teams that you're like, hey, there's more like-minded guys on these teams now more than it ever was in high school?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like people are definitely open, which is really cool. It's definitely a really cool opportunity to see people, like, even just with like the Jesus One shirts, like people just rep those left and right, and it's just such a cool reminder walking through the clubhouse and seeing a bunch of guys wearing it. But yeah, I feel like people are just becoming more open.
There's nothing better than just that statement. I mean, those shirts are awesome, and just the virality of those things of, because that's super bold. I mean, you wear that in a locker room, and everyone instantly knows, okay, they know where you stand.
Yeah.
But then you got to live that out. But yeah, that's so cool, and it's fun to hear those stories and talk about those, because there's definitely been a shift in sports where you see guys are just so open, and you know, there could have been where that faith had always been pretty strong in those locker rooms, just for whatever reason guys maybe felt like they couldn't talk about it as much, because it is a business, you know, sports are a business. But guys are really being intentional of using that platform, and just like yourself, I mean, taking time, you know, you just came out of practice straight to here to be able to share your testimony and what God is doing in and through your life. So thank you for doing that. And you know, if there's something that for the kids listening out there, what is kind of a parting, you know, wish or a verse or something that you were like, if I was your age, here's what I wish I would have known then? What wisdom can you pass to them?
Yeah. I think Matthew 6:33 comes to mind. I think Psalm 23 has been a big one for me, but just knowing, like, we talk about identity, but just knowing that, like, the game or whatever adversity you're going through, it's got a purpose. Like, you can walk through really hard times with the Lord, and he will sustain you and he'll fulfill you. And I think just going out, whatever you're doing every day, just going out and giving it your all, like, that's God glorifying, and that's your worship. Whatever sport you're playing, if it's baseball, if it's something else, but just like worshiping him through like what you're doing that day, and just giving it 110%, and then just trusting him with the rest of it, and knowing that he has good plans for you and he will take care of you.
Yeah, that's good. And one of the things we also like to do on here is we like to try and encourage those listening and to live their life out for Christ. But we also like to try and encourage the people that come on this show, like yourself. And so really, I mean, I would say just the story of your career has kind of been like, if he stays healthy, you know, the sky's the limit. And you've had that the past year, you're getting added to the 40-man. So these things are starting to, you know, you can probably feel the excitement and stuff. What is a way that we can pray for you during this upcoming season as you continue in your career?
Yeah, wow. That's cool. I think yeah, the Lord has been so kind to me. Like, it's been up and down, but he didn't have to allow me to continue playing. So just, I'd say I like pray for just me to have fun, like to just go out there and to know where I stand with the Lord, or he's with me, and to know that, like, it's already written, like he's gone before me, and he knows like what's going to happen with my career, and that I would trust in that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. We'll certainly be praying for you, and let me just go ahead and pray for you now.
Awesome.
Yeah. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you just for everything you're doing in Carson's life. And thank you for his willingness just to come here and, you know, after a long day of practice and a long week, just to come here and talk about you and talk about, you know, just the different things he's overcome in his life and the encouraging things that you're going to do in his life. And pray as this season kind of starts to unravel and steam ahead, God, that you'll just help him to stay present and help him just to enjoy being out there. You know, he's gone through some lows with these injuries, and he's thankful to be playing again, and just help him to enjoy that and to relax and to be present in the moment and open to those opportunities where you're prompting him to be a light and to encourage those around him in the locker room. And we just pray for that you just have a special hand of protection over him and his teammates this year, and just encourage him in everything he does in his life and even outside of the game, that you'll help him to keep that, you know, good perspective and to continue diving into your word to grow in his relationship with you. And we pray this in your name. Amen. Awesome.
Exactly.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
You're listening to the Identity Sports Podcast, where we dive into the world of faith, sports, and inspiration with athletes from across the country. I'm your host, Zach Vogel.